Welcome back to the Baddie Girls Book Club podcast channel. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Stephanie.
And we are two chatty baddies who love to talk about books.
For this week's author spotlight, we have two amazing authors and sisters who co-wrote The Stars Would Curse Us series. In the author's own words, The Stars Would Curse Us is the first in a planned duology, an epic romantic fantasy with cozy and stabby vibes, plenty of swoon-worthy moments, steamy crackdoor romance, and a jaw-dropping cliffhanger at the end. We are so excited to introduce Valerie and Stephanie.
Hey!
Hi.
Valerie and Stephanie, we would love to kick this off if you both could share a little bit about both of your individual and combined journeys into becoming authors and how you decided to co-write the series as sisters.
Who wants to go first?
You're like, who goes?
Wait, time out. I need to know, based on the fact that you both hesitated, who the older sister is and who the younger sister is.
Well, Stephanie's the older sister, and we both, it's hard because we both want to answer the question, but we don't want to like cut each other off. But it started out with Stephanie's birthday.
Yeah.
The birthday call, right?
So I think we were talking about how I had read maybe like 100 plus books the year before, and she was like, you should write a book because you basically have a PhD in romantasy because you read so much. And I was like, I've always wanted to, but I just don't feel like I have anything original enough to bring to the table. And Valerie said, hey, I've got lots of ideas. So she's like, hey, what about this? And she just starts shooting out these random ideas. And I'm like, wait a minute, that one actually has potential. And she's like, really? And then we just kind of start thinking about it. And we're like, what if we do this together? I mean, we didn't tell anybody. We're just like, let's just kind of take this journey and see what happens. And started brainstorming and throwing stuff into a Google Doc. And yeah, just kind of happened. And 4 months later, we had a whole book.
Yeah, we were like, let's just see if we can write it by July. This is like in the end of January. Like, let's see if we could get a first draft by July. Let's not edit it. Let's just write and see if we can even get the words on paper. Let's see if we could even get a story. Yeah. And we just started writing, and we're like, I heard that the hardest part about writing a book is just like writing it, like getting it out. And most people give up before they even finish writing the story. So I was like, let's not try to edit it because I read that was a bad idea. So let's just try to write the whole thing and see if we have something. I think seeing her writing really inspired me to write it, and then vice versa. We would get the emails from Google Docs, and we'd see each other writing, and it would just really encourage us and it was exciting to see, like, where is this story going to go? Because we kind of had basically a rough idea of what the story was going to be about, where we wanted it to end up, but we had no idea how it was going to get there. We wanted the story. We're pantsers at heart, so we just kind of let the characters take us there. So it was really, really fun.
I'm so impressed by that. And I was so curious of like how you kind of divvied up the workload, like how you worked off of each other, because reading it doesn't like I think you would worry like, oh, like, will it sound broken up? There's more than one author, which I know plenty of books like Christina Lauren, that's 2 authors. Like there's plenty of people who do that, but I feel like it's so smooth and streamlined. Like I would have no idea if I didn't know that it was 2 people that wrote this book. Like it is just so beautifully written. How did you kind of work off of each other? Like, did you have like, okay, I'm going to work on this scene, or this is my favorite character or storyline, I want to focus on this, or did you just kind of go with the flow?
Well, so Stephanie wanted to write Ariane Wen, and I wanted to write Ayla, so it was perfect because we both like got the character that we wanted. And I think it helps because it kind of gives each character their own unique voice, especially as like brand new authors. We're new to learning how to do this, so I think that kind of helped set the characters apart. But then I think the reason why it is so smooth is because we are sisters. So we probably talk and think very, like, you know what I mean, in similar ways. We grew up in Europe, so sometimes our like German grammar comes out by mistake in some of the writing. And of course we had an editor who made sure everything made sense. So I think that, yeah, but it's really nice to hear that you guys felt like didn't feel too choppy and all over the place, because having the story flow and feel like, I don't know, cohesive was important to us.
Yeah, and even with like two different storylines, I feel like sometimes books can feel kind of choppy, and it really did not feel like that.
Well, people, whenever we get feedback from people, they're like, I had no idea how these stories are going to connect. Like the whole time I'm reading it, like, how does it connect? How does it connect? And I mean, I think the first book flowed out of us so easily because they were very separate. Like we knew how they were going to connect, obviously. You know, kind of, we kind of had to know that part.
We didn't have to write any scenes together. Like we could completely write separately and then give each other feedback, but we didn't really have to be involved in each other's scenes, if that makes sense.
So it was definitely easier to kind of we both just ran with our own parts. And now as we're working on the big conclusion of the story, it's way more collaborative because everybody's all kind of together. So I feel like our writing and everything has grown, and we were learning a lot together. And it's been a little bit harder writing the second book because of how much more collaborative it is. But I hope that it's even better than the first one. So we'll see.
We're excited. We want to see too.
So the novella just came out, and that one was also a totally different writing process because it's focused on only one character. Well, there's a little bit of a dual POV, but it's more focused on just one character. So we had to write it different, and I think that kind of helped us learn to work together better as well.
It's like a little test run.
Yeah, and the novella is more of like a cozy romance, whereas book 2 is going to be full of action and like lots of drama, and it's exciting.
Lots of emotional damage.
Yeah.
Emotional damage.
We love the emotional damage. That's like what makes a good book at the end of the day. I want to feel crushed.
Exactly. Like I'm the same way. I'm like, I want to feel crushed when I read. That way it makes my life not feel as bad. Like
I want to feel something here. I love that. And I want to pivot just a little bit too, talking about the book, writing it. Another thing that you did, Valerie, I believe took this over, is the character art. Stunning. So it looks like you made your own character art, and truly beautiful. I'm so impressed. Can you tell us a little bit about that process, how you went about it, how you decided to do it yourself, how you're just an incredible artist?
Well, so yeah, I mean, I haven't really used that creative side of myself for many years, actually. Maybe 8.
She made these.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, that's amazing.
So that was actually Stephanie's idea, because she knows that like I used to do art, but I've never done digital art, and so yeah, these are the under the cup. This is the novella.
Beautiful,
So
like
beautiful.
that's stunning.
But but she's like, oh, you know how to do art? You could do the cover, and I was like, okay, sure, I'll take on that challenge. It was the hardest thing ever to try to learn how to. I hadn't used Photoshop in years and years, and just learning how to do all this stuff. But it got me back into drawing, and I had probably a dozen just horrible cover designs, which before I got to the one that we ended up with. So, but I got back into drawing, and in some ways I feel like my breaking back into the creative side of me is similar to like Ayla's journey of like rediscovering her secret powers. I'm like, I'm rediscovering like this artistic side of me that I've like suppressed for so many years, because I was always told I would never make money off of art. Like, so I just completely shoved it aside because I was focused on success and wealth. And so I was like, okay. But now I'm kind of like realizing how important art is. And it's funny, especially at the time that AI art is popping up all over the place. I'm rediscovering art, and you see how much work and how much time you put into it. And I'm like, I spent, I don't know, maybe 9 hours working on like one portrait of one of the characters, maybe more. And like, spread out over time, and then somebody else can generate that online in like 5 minutes,
Yes.
So, but it's worth it in the end, because I know that like I was able to create that character the way that I wanted to. But it is hard because I feel like, Stephanie and I sometimes have a little bit of a different vision. So trying to make sure that it matches both of our vision, but she's always been encouraging me with that. So that's been great.
I think that's like when Danielle and I have spoken about, if we've been reading a book at the same time, my vision for the character versus we're not co-writing a book together, so it's fine, right? But we'll always joke about how you could describe a character to the T what they look like, I will picture something completely out of pocket.
It's always Henry Cavill, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
Literally, and, like, why wouldn't it be, right?
Yeah,
Like, why would I
100%.
choose anyone else? And so I can imagine that trying to make it a dynamic effort, it's like, well, actually, I pictured him with this kind of hair. Well, ooh, that's kind of, but I really want him to look like this, right? I feel like that can be challenging. And it's
Yes.
just, you know,
And it can be hard as an artist too, like when you work hard on something and somebody sees it a different way, to accept that criticism is sometimes difficult, because I'm like, well, like you're telling me how to draw it, but this is how I drew it, and you know what I mean? It's hard. It's sometimes hard to take. But I think becoming authors and, you know, putting our book out there and learning to take feedback, that's hard too.
It's really hard. It's very brave.
everyone has their own imagination, and I think that, like, your own personal tastes and preferences will always come into play. I will never picture a clean cut female. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. Like, you can
He's a
show
bad
me.
boy. Sorry.
I'll never picture it. I'm like, give me a little bit of
Yeah,
facial
yeah,
hair.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think it just goes to show, again, everyone has their own preferences and biases for what this character might look like, but regardless, the character art is gorgeous.
It really is.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think seeing it from like the author's perspective, obviously when people like commission work too, people, you know, get an artist to create what their vision is. I think that can get really close, but like being the artist who wrote the book, who like has a bit, like, I trust you. I want to know how you saw the character because you wrote the book, you know? So I think that's really, really special.
Well, part of me is a little bit hesitant because I don't want to interfere with your imagination, you know, and I don't want to tell you how to see the characters, because I want you to be able to see. And also, I can't tell you how Stephanie sees the characters, only the way that I do. And she can give me some feedback, but like, my ability as an artist is not that good to the point that I can make it exactly how she imagines it. So it's, you know, it's a balance.
I think most people, I'm the same, Valerie, where I will, if it's not provided to me, I will search it.
She will find it.
I will get spoiled all of the time. But I view character art as a starting point. If you see 5 different versions of character art, you're like, okay, I get a general sense of what this character looks like, and then I'll use my own imagination to fill in the blanks of what my mind is telling me this character should look like based off my own bias and preferences, right?
Love it. I wanted to talk a little bit about the intentionality behind creating so many different races of characters within your novel, how that came about. I think it's just so important. And I think a lot of novels don't explicitly talk about the different races. It's like, we know that, like, oh, there's different like fae, and there's like high fae, and there's like, you know, lower fae. But I think it was really, really intentional in your book. And I wanted to know kind of what the journey was behind that. And then I would love to read that quote at some point too, because I took a screenshot of that today.
Well, tell us what the quote is first.
Okay, it says, most wondrous of all was seeing the various elemental fae all laughing and spending time together, not separated by the color of their skin or the power in their blood. So yeah, I would love to hear a little bit more about how that came about for you guys.
I mean, I think that it's always great to see different kinds of people in a book and not just have it be everyone looks the same. And in terms of like inspiration for us, Valerie came up with this whole idea of using these Latin words that meant the different metals for all the different races. And so we kind of want to do something that was a little different than like the
Yeah.
regular fae books. And actually, they weren't even fae in the beginning. They were just elemental people. And then we were like, you know, maybe we should jump on the fae train because it's hot right now.
People love fae. Jump on it.
So, but yeah, I was like, what if we do this thing where each race looks completely different and they have their own features and they have their own elemental magic. And yes, I mean, I'd say that the inspiration from that came from Valerie's brilliant mind. But it was just, I don't know, like, I think that there's a real beauty in seeing all these different people come together. And the Iris, who are like the bad guys, obviously, they were supposed to be the most beautiful of all because they were a blend of all the races together.
One of the important, I guess, political aspects of the book is that these, you know, rulers are keeping everyone
Yes.
separate. And by keeping them separate, they are weakened, you know. And now the question is, if we bring everyone together, could we be more powerful than these people who've basically been withholding that from them, you know, keeping them separate intentionally and basically having all of the power to themselves. So what happens when you bring everyone together?
That's
Anyway.
so beautiful. No, you said it so perfectly. And that's kind of what I was thinking. That's how I felt like reading it and learning about all the different like elemental fae and the races. So that's really how I felt reading it. And I was hoping that was kind of what you guys felt writing it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and we wanted to like also kind of, there's maybe a little bit more of it in the next book. We didn't really have time to dig too into like some of the other like races, because we're mostly focused on Ayla and Arianwen, so we learned like a lot about kind of their, you know, traditions and cultures and things, whereas like, you know, the other courts have their own kind of things. So in book 2 you'll learn a little bit about it, but like we want to kind of, you know, show a little bit of that for some, you know, fun world building and depth.
The nice thing is that even though the story will wrap up in book 2, we do feel like there is a world of possibilities if we wanted to write anything else. In that world, there are other people we can discover, and we can, you know, dig deeper into like, oh, we could do a novella about this character and learn more about these people. And I mean, we don't have anything planned, but there is a possibility.
It
Right?
leaves it open for you guys. And we love that.
Yeah.
And there's a good chunk of side characters who I think people would be interested in reading more about if they got the chance to. So
we've heard.
Do it for the people.
Oh, that's awesome. And then also I have to call out, so when I was first starting the book, I know I've seen this in some books, but it's not the most common, but I really, really love it. The pronunciation guide and just the general glossary before you start. To me, it's like, okay, you get a little bit of world building in the first few chapters of the book, but to me that's like the cheat sheet, right? Like, okay, before I'm entering this book, before I even have the chance to be like, wait, where are we and what's going on, I have this little thing, this little sheet that I can refer to, and that helped me tremendously. And also the pronunciations, because I feel
I
like
knew you'd love that stuff. I knew it.
Can you tell I'm type A? Because
Yes.
Well, and Stephanie too, that was like her taking the lead on, like she did all the formatting, the interior formatting of the book. Stephanie did all of that, and she was really big on like, let's put this in the beginning of the book, because a lot of people put that in the end, but by the time you get to the end, you already have been pronouncing their name wrong. So I'm kind of like, I don't care if people say it wrong, but Stephanie's like, no, we got to do this. And so far everybody has, I mean, if you don't like it, just skip over it, but I think people really like it.
I took a picture of it to like refer back to. It was really helpful. I was like, oh, let me take a little pic of this for later.
That's a good idea.
I support. I hope you did it for book number 2 as well.
We're actually planning on having a little recap of book 1 in the beginning of book 2.
Ooh,
so that
love. This is my dream.
Because sometimes when, I mean, I know that there's been so many like fantasy books that I've read, and I get to a point where I'm like, I don't remember which book this was, because they all kind of like blur together in my mind, and I'm like, wait, what happened when, and who is the what? And so, because not everybody likes to reread books, we made like a little mini one in the novella, because the novella is about Ari, and so we kind of had like a little bit of a recap of her story, so for anyone who hadn't read the book in a while. And then so for book 2 we'll have both characters. That way it's like a cheat sheet of like, hey, you don't have to read the entire book to be able to like, you know, catch up.
We can tell
Like
that
to-
you've read hundreds of books. I mean, you like that is perfect. Like you can tell a reader wrote this book. Like that is such a great idea.
And you're setting a new standard for me. I'm now going to rate every other book a 3. I'll be like, it didn't come with a
No
cheat
pronunciation
sheet.
guide, no recap.
Because, no, I'll be honest with you. What I have been doing when I read books is I'll keep notes on my phone. So I'll jot, as we meet new characters, as they introduce new characters, I'll jot notes in my phone, and then I'll take notes like, here's where the book left off. And then before I start the next book, I'm like, okay. And that's been helpful. But
Oh, that's a good idea.
yeah, but also love.
I would probably never remember to do it.
Yeah. Again, I'm clearly very type A, methodical.
Yes. That's why we
so-
work together.
Yeah, but I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm not a rereader, but I'm not a rereader.
She's not a rereader.
I'll reread my notes, and then for me,
Yes.
it's like, great. Now I want to get into book number 2. Here's a little refresher. So I really, really love that idea.
I think it's also confusing because we have like 4 races and they all start with an A. And I remember our editor was like, "Do you guys want to like give them different names?" And I was like, "We can't because these words specifically mean those things."
But
so
that's why it helps, like the
can't.
glossary. I feel like that helps a lot for sure.
Yeah.
Like, okay, which
And
one
I
is
mean, I
this?
think if we were going to do things differently, like if we were going to be like, hey, let's start over from the beginning and write our first book again, we might not give both main characters the same initial.
Yeah, there's a lot of A's in this
But
book.
like, I feel like we would probably do that differently if, going into now, just because I know some people can get confused. I mean, their names are very different, but still.
I mean, I feel like it's not as bad as like House of Dragons, where it's like Aegon.
No, that's confusing. Yeah, that's too
oh my God, I
much. I'd be
can't
like,
keep up with all the names. Damon. I don't know.
Yeah.
I watched this
They all
show
have the same name.
called like The Last Kingdom on Netflix,
Yeah.
and almost everybody had the same name, and it was so confusing. I'm like, how many Ethel this, Ethel Red, Ethel Fled, Ethel Stan, Ethel? I'm like, how many?
Ethel
And this is
who?
based on a book.
yes.
So people like wrote this on purpose. Like this is.
Your next series, you guys are gonna have like an A, a Z, a B. You're gonna have everything.
Even now, like when we're writing, if we need to get a new name, it's like we can't use another A name
Like,
or
no
another
A's,
B name.
they're
There's too
out.
many A's and B's.
Yeah, we definitely have thrown letters on names. Like there have been a few names where we're like, let's just change the first letter on that one, and then there was a name in the book and it was like, oh, it sounds a little bit too similar to Ari, so we changed it to we put
Yep.
an N instead of the
Love
R.
it.
You know.
I love that, and you have the power to do that.
Or we also couldn't think of a name for this like kind of bad character, and so
Oh,
we
yeah.
like combined 2 ex-boyfriends' names.
Love.
Oh my
that
gosh. Love.
so much. I love.
So
That was
I love when
fun.
it's like real life inspo.
Yeah.
And so far we haven't named any characters after anyone that we know in real life, but that was one that we were like, what should we call him? And yeah, so I was like, Steph, what was that name of that guy that that did this? And then I was like, okay, let's put both of their names
Yes.
together. And
That's
it
so
worked.
healing too. I feel like that's really like cathartic. I
Yeah.
love that so much.
And you two mentioned before that you grew up in, was it Germany for a period of time?
Austria, Switzerland, and
Oh,
France.
okay. And you said that maybe there was some hints to it, or the language in the book maybe had some nods to that.
So I mean, there's like a few. So our family's also Estonian. Like my grandfather came over when he was a young boy, during like kind of the World War II era, and so we have a lot of family in Estonia. So like there's like, especially up in Zafiria, there's some kind of inspiration from when we lived in Switzerland, and then there's also inspiration of kind of like the Nordic culture. And with some of the names, like
Yes.
Valeric, we kind of, like that was a made up name, but like just so a lot of the names we found them from kind of the cultures that we grew up with, and just little things like that, just to be kind of fun.
Like Estera, Estonia.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool.
But then we also included, we had like with all the Latin names for the elements. We had like a little bit of some of the names have like a Latin inspiration to them when it comes to like, the Matri Ritus and the Matri Ludus and just things like that. We were like, okay, so we're going to pick this as our kind of foundation and kind of create words off of that, because why not?
Why not? I love
Why
that.
not?
And I feel like creating names in these other worlds must be so challenging. Like thinking of, the non like stereotypical names that we hear in like our world. So I feel like that's really cool to be able to use that to help with the inspiration for those names.
Oh, I like making up names and stuff.
Yes.
Sometimes they're not very good, but sometimes
No,
they
I
work.
love it.
Well, the one of the fun things is that Valerie loves putting all these like elemental puns into the
Yes.
story and trying to, like, because in this world they don't believe in like a heaven and hell in the same way that we would.
Yeah.
In our culture and in our religious systems in our world. So it's like, okay, what do they believe in? They believe in the stars. It's like, well, what would they say? Like,
Yes.
you can't say like, what the hell? Like, what would
Stars
you say
above.
instead of that?
I think my favorite one, it was like, was it Faex?
Fakes.
Oh yeah, Stephanie did that
I
one.
was actually cracking up at that. I'm like, I might use this in everyday life.
And I
What
don't
the
even know
fake?
how to pronounce it. We didn't even put that. We didn't put that in the pronunciation guide, and I still don't know how to say it.
I
just
love
like
that too. That's so funny.
Fex,
Yeah,
fakes,
Thanks.
facts. I don't
I
know.
know.
The
It's like
fakes.
one of those things where it just whatever. But like in our recent book, there was this whole line where one of the characters, who's an earth elemental, was saying something, and Valerie's like, "What in the ancient tree roots?" And I was like, "Is this really cheesy or is it good?" And
Right.
like everyone's like, "Oh, I think it's so good.
No,
It's
I
so
love
funny."
it's
it.
perfect. It's
I
Or the
perfect.
bird stain.
yes, I
Yeah.
love puns so much. Like you're speaking my language. That's so fun.
So I mean, for us, it was kind of like trying to, and I know it's technically an adult novel, but we wanted to, at least for the series, we wanted to not have it full of modern day
Yeah.
cussing.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with
Yeah.
that, but like,
Oh yeah, I curse like a
Yes.
sailor. But we didn't want to make the book feel vulgar with words
Yeah.
like that, because sometimes even myself, like, I curse so much, so much. But sometimes when I'm reading or listening to a book, I don't want to hear it,
Yes.
which is weird. So I'm like, let's just not put all that in this
Yeah.
book.
but we've had to be creative with
Yeah.
coming up with
Yeah.
like what can we use that's not all the same, and that's where Valerie's like, bird stain and
Yes. I feel like it gets the point across in a more like creative and fun way. Like it's entertaining for the reader because I was cracking up reading that too. And you can picture it them saying that in their world. So I think it was really clever.
it was definitely fun kind of trying to create this whole different world and realizing like as we were writing it, and this is one of the great things about having alpha readers and beta readers and having people that kind of come along the journey with you before it's even published, is that they would notice stuff and be like, hey, does this make sense in this
Yeah.
world? Like, would they know what this is? Because I think there's probably like a hell in there at one point. Or even certain turns of phrases that we'd use, like, oh, I'm running out of gas. Like, you can't say that if they don't have gas. So yeah, it's been kind of challenging and finding ways to communicate things that just make sense to us, but would not necessarily make sense to the characters. So
And you don't want the language to feel stiff either. Like, it's got to have some kind of expressions that make it feel more
Yeah, it was very
natural, like
playful.
how we
I
talk.
like that a lot. And very like
And sometimes I like bringing a little bit of the modern in. Like, I enjoyed it when sometimes, like, they'd say, oh, this feels a little modern. But I'm like, I think it's a little fun when you have, if it's not too modern, but if it just, you know what I mean?
mix.
It makes it, it changes things up a little bit from the typical fantasy where everybody's speaking in a British accent.
Literally. Okay, so what are some of the main tropes or what readers would love this book? So maybe if it's inspired by, or if you liked this book, you'll love this book. I know, or at least I'm going to say this, maybe you guys disagree, arranged marriage I feel like was kind of a big trope for the book.
yes, you'll definitely see that more in the novella. So I think as a series as a whole, sometimes it's hard even to like figure out what can you say without being too spoilery. Well, there's definitely like elements of chosen one.
Yep.
There's, I mean, and it also depends on who you ask, because like I think that it's a slow burn, but then some people are like, no, it's not a slow burn if they get together in the first book. So
She finds a wounded stranger in the woods.
Yes.
That's a trope, right?
honestly that is.
we have one bed, one horse, one Aquila.
One Aquila.
Yeah, Stephanie really likes that trope, if you
I
can't
love
tell.
the forced proximity. Okay, I can't help it. So yeah, there's lots of forced proximity going on. It has the elemental magic. It has the deadly trials. So hard to like find, original ideas for trials,
Yes.
because it has been done a lot, and it's like, how do we make this something that is new?
Yes.
And definitely
You did
glad
it.
that we were able to come up with something that was cool, and Valerie did such a great job writing
So
this.
good.
She writes the really suspenseful moments so well. I'm like all like flirty banter, like I love that's
Yes.
like where I like to write, and Valerie's all like intense, like
Yes.
kill people.
It's such a good
Yeah,
balance.
I'm like, how many people can I kill in this chapter? It's like we both have different strengths, and like, oh my gosh, there's so many scenes that she wrote that are just so good. And she likes to say that she's not good at writing action, but she is. She just doesn't, take credit for it.
It's almost like yin and yang, where you both, like, you're acknowledging, okay, I'm really good at this, I'm really good at that, let's combine both of our efforts and make something really, really cool together. And Valerie, if you really enjoy doing this, and Stephanie, you really enjoy doing that, let's not force the other person to do things that they don't want to do. And let's ride on our strengths. I love that.
Oh yeah, there was this scene that we were working at when we were in alpha or dev edits on the novella, and there were a couple scenes that we really needed to kind of like rework. And so she took one scene which was very dialogue heavy, and she's very good at doing dialogue and banter and stuff. And I took this other scene that was kind of supposed to be more intense, kind of a little bit scary scene. And I was so excited to write that scene. And the other scene, I was like,
no.
ugh, like I did not want to do that one. But the idea of doing this scene with this like bad character, I like writing the bad guy. So I got really excited. And it was perfect because it was like divide and conquer. I got to write the bad guy, make it extra creepy, extra like add all the emotion. The crazy thing is, we're writing book 2, right? And I was like, we need more battle. We need more battle. I had this, idea. We need this battle scene. But like we're so busy right now, and I told Stephanie kind of the idea what I want. I wrote like a really, really terrible outline.
She's laughing. She's like,
It's really bad.
Well, no, I mean, it was funny because she actually like Marco Polo'd me the outline, and then I just typed up, and I was like, they do this, like they like
was really
dive
bad.
into the scene, and then cool badass moves.
But then Stephanie started going in and writing it, and she's like, "Oh, I can't write action," and I'm like, "Yeah, you can't." And she like has almost written the whole scene without me, and I'm like, "Dude," she wrote a few places like, "Here, add cool
do
battle
something
or
cool.
fighting moves here,
insert
add like
moves here.
Insert battle.
Yeah.
I love.
or sometimes in her chapters she'll be like, add some description, because I like to write like the descriptions of things. Like I like to paint the picture, so she'll be like, add more description here, and I'll go in and do that, or so we'll kind of like play off each other's strengths. But she's definitely written some really good, exciting action scenes for book 2.
I try.
And I think also we've both grown.
Yeah.
Like I think I'm getting better at writing banter, and I'm getting better at writing dialogue, and she's getting better at writing action. So, but we definitely do have our preferences. Like a lot of times I don't like to write them talking. Like I could write a whole scene of things happening without any dialogue.
Like, I just want the violence. I love it.
I just want the emotional damage.
Yeah, I just want to
Let's
wreck
see
my
how many people we
readers.
can-
Sorry.
And there's a lot of emotion, and especially like it's like I feel like from the halfway point to the end, it's just like
She's like,
we're crying the whole time.
Valerie, I think next you need to do like read a mafia romance, or just like
Oh, I've never read one.
or like a really damaging psychological thriller.
Oh,
I have
yeah.
one of my friends who I've done a few buddy reads with her. She wants the books that are like, what is the book? Butcher and Blackbird. She was reading the trigger warnings for me. It's like accidental cannibalism. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm okay.
I don't. Yeah, that's a bit much.
she's
for
like,
me.
that's pushing it.
I'm not really sure how you can accidentally like.
You'll have to read the book to find out.
Yeah, because we're not gonna know.
So Stephanie and I both also we love books that have smut in them, and our books are kind of like not really there at the more cracked
Yes.
door. I think especially as brand new authors, we didn't feel comfortable writing it yet, but as we've been writing more and more, we're getting more comfortable with it. So we've been having to try to cut some of the stuff like down to kind of keep it consistent. And but like as people who read, romance with smut, because some of our readers are more on the low spice level, and then we have other readers who read everything. So it's kind of like that's one of like I feel like the challenges is trying to make sure that we stay within the lower spice so that we can not make those readers unhappy. But then like wanting to kind of learn and explore this other side, it's really fun. And
There may or may not be like a super spicy library ladder scene in book 2.
Let's just say,
Oh my gosh.
if my husband reads the chapter, he will definitely be building me
A ladder. He's
library
gonna be like,
with a ladder.
I'm in the tool shop.
Whether or not it's going to stay in the
That's
book
so
like
funny.
that, it's because it's very much more open door. But like, okay, so for you as readers who you probably read things that are more open door, and so does it feel like it's lacking?
No, genuinely no. I'm somebody, as much as I love like the open door spice and I can read a lot of spice, I think Steph and I have talked about this too. I've definitely read books where I'm like, I feel like they're just putting spice in to like give people this spice and it doesn't add to the plot. Like I feel like it's very tasteful, and I like when it like follows suit with the plot and it seems actually realistic and not just like every 2 seconds they're like, you know, having this open door scene. Because I've definitely read books like that where I'm like, well, where's this coming from, you know? And as much as I love this spice, I really love it when it's intentional. And I'm just as happy reading a book where it's like the build up, the tension, the like banter, the flirting. Like I love
Right.
that
That's the
truly
funnest part.
just as much. Yeah, I love that. So I feel
Yeah.
like you guys are in like such a good spot with that, truly. But the latter
Well,
scene
if you-
sounds great.
If you do like a little extra spice, there is a bonus scene that's written from Wynn's POV.
That's such a great compromise, especially I'm somebody who always like veers on the side of like not wanting to make people uncomfortable as well, like even if I'm like very comfortable with that stuff. And we had an author on who writes romance, Melissa Diamond, recently, and she wrote like a spicy version of her book.
Oh, I love Melissa
it.
Diamond.
She wrote this spicy and
and
sweet version of her book.
I think
So
that is so
freaking cool.
amazing. Such a great
Yeah,
idea.
so even with
Yeah.
the bonus chapters, that's what I was just thinking, like giving someone like a spicy scene in a bonus chapter, because then people can read it if they want to or not, but they will.
They don't
we
have
will.
to.
Yeah, I really like that idea.
It's kind of fun to be like, hey, we can explore writing a little bit more spice.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know what our future series will be, but you know, I think that either way, as long as we're consistent in a series, you know, like if we're going to write the
agreed.
series, we want it to try to feel the same and not
Yeah.
be like, oh, book 1 is tame and book 2 is like 5 chili peppers.
Yes, yes.
All
And
eggs.
I think it's natural sometimes, like for some progressive like spice to get a little bit spicy, because if you think about relationships, like that's normal in the sense of like, oh, like they're more comfortable with each other, like they're gonna have some more intimacy. But I agree, if it's like one chili pepper and the next one's like every 2 scenes, you're like, well, okay. But no, I think you guys are doing great.
I thought this was a perfect blend of both, and I don't think that you're shutting readers out who don't like it or shutting readers out who really do like it.
Agree.
So, thanks.
And we really, Stephanie and I both love to read YA. And we're both in our 30s, and we're moms, we've got kids. But I still love YA because there's something about YA books, they're so fun, they're so fast, they're easy to read, and there's so much action. And so we were like, let's write a book that feels like a YA book, but let's make the characters a little older so that it's a little bit more
Thank you.
relatable.
Yes, love.
And maybe the next one they'll be even older. I'm like, you know, we did 25. Maybe the next one we'll do 30.
Yes,
you know, who knows?
represent
But
us.
because it is also hard, like to sometimes write a more mature character. But so writing a younger character can be, you know, you can kind of show their growth. So writing an older character, sometimes it's more tricky to come up with like how to show their growth, you know, emotionally but we didn't want to be like, okay, this is a 17-year-old saving the world, ordering 500, because we've had plenty of books like that. So we're like, let's just change it up a little bit.
I love that.
Well, it gets weird, like when, as an adult, like I go back to one of those old CW TV shows, and I'm like, I just can't. Like, it's a little weird.
And
to,
when it's like
be
30-year-olds playing 18-year-olds, I'm like, why can't we just be the age we are?
Bump it up 10 years.
Yeah, and I don't want to, like, my library, they have all the YA books in like a teenager room. You have to go into a separate room that's only teenagers. And I'm like, I feel so awkward
like-
walking in there. Like, they're looking at me like I'm, like, what are
Literally.
you doing
You're
in
like, I'm
here?
getting my pigtails
And I'm
in
like,
today.
but
No
I
one will
want
know.
to read these books too, you know? So I'm like, let's make a book that we can all read, and it's not going to be in the
Well, that's
young
what
adult
Kindles
section.
are for, and then no one has to know. What you're
No one will know. I love that. Now everyone knows our secrets. Oh my gosh, you guys are so fun. I love this. All right, so where can readers find your book and follow along with your journey?
I would say that the best place to keep up to date with what's going on would be to follow us on Instagram. I'm Steph Devourer of Books, and she's Valerie Rivers author. If you like signed copies, we do have an Etsy shop where we sell signed copies of our 2 books. I can't believe we have 2 books now.
Yeah.
And otherwise, you can find us pretty much on any online retailer like Amazon. I know that our book is on Target.com,
That's so
Barnes
cool.
and Noble.com. Our ebook is only available on Amazon, and it is available on KU as well.
Perfect.
But pretty much, if you go online shopping, you can find it somewhere. And we do have links on our website, silverflamebooks.com, that gives you like a universal link that'll show you all the options.
Perfect.
Oh, and we do. We do have in the works an audiobook.
That's exciting. Oh my
Exciting.
goodness, we're excited. And will you post about that on your Instagram as well?
We haven't yet.
Once
we haven't
it's
yet.
like up in.
But yes, we haven't started the recording process just yet, but we did sign a contract. So
we're so
hopefully-
excited.
I never used to be into audiobooks when I was younger. I'd zone out too much. Like my husband and I would try to listen while driving, like on a long car trip, and I'd fall asleep and I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
I miss everything.
I missed all the important stuff, and especially with like fantasy books. It's like, wait, what? I need to see it. I need to see it. But I don't know, like ever since, just in the last couple of years of just being busy and stuff and not having as much time. Now that we're also writing books and putting a lot of our time into that, I've fallen in love with audiobooks, and I'm able to listen to fantasy books now and actually understand it. So, I mean, I think it just is like a learning curve and figuring out what speed works for me. If it's too slow, then I lose interest.
Love it. Well, we're so excited. We can't wait to follow along and see the journey for the audiobook, because I will absolutely be listening to that.
Love that. Well, thank you both so much for letting us highlight your work today. We are loving your book so far and are so honored to be able to share it on our platform.
If you like what we have to say and you want to hear more, please leave us a review and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube at Batty Girls Book Club. And don't forget to stay batty.